Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Gray Matter. Well, today's episode presents another very interesting, illuminating guest, and this person actually hits on three streams in terms of the guests that we tend to have on this program. As you know, we like to talk about sports and culture, and she hits on those two for sure. She's also a successful woman and an Albertan, and of course that hits on at least one or perhaps two more. And she's an entrepreneur. So we're going to find out a lot about Five Elements Martial Arts Studio today. And so our guest is Maeghen Cotterill. She's just returned from Wales. We hope that she doesn't nod off and go full Joe Biden on us, because I think it's over there. For her body's probably telling her it's between supper time and bedtime. But she's assured us that she's got some strong coffee. She's going to make it through, and she's going to be talking most of the time, so that should keep her awake. Although that does not seem to help Mr. Biden very much. She's much younger, obviously, as is just about everybody else on the planet. But I digress. Back to the show. So, as we always do, we're going to start on our aphorism sport, and these are in her honor. Somewhat. She'll have to forgive me because, as I often do on this show, I steal from guests. I steal knowledge and understanding because I don't know a lot about the things that people come on and talk about. And so I don't know a lot about martial arts, and I'm excited to learn more about it here. So hopefully she's not offended by these quotations. I'm always concerned that some of these things that I select, the guests will think, what was he thinking about? So anyway, here goes. The first one is a Japanese proverb which says, of course, this is an English translation because I do not speak Japanese. Although I can say thank you 1,000 times in Japanese, Maeghen. It's domo arigato gozaimashita. Nice. Anyway, in the struggle between the stone and water, in time, the water wins. The second one is from an ancient Grecian philosopher. You know that I'm always going to have some sort of Greek influence on the show. And this is Herodotus, who famously wrote that force has no place where there is need of skill. And sometimes lawyers have to remember that one, including me. The next one is from somebody named Miyamoto Musashi. Hopefully that means something to our guest, who is quoted as saying, the ultimate aim of martial arts is not having to use them. And finally, someone I do know, and that most people who know at least a little bit about martial arts knows about, Bruce Lee, the late Bruce Lee, who was quoted as saying, like any art, martial arts is ultimately self-knowledge. A punch or kick is not to knock the hell out of the person in front of you, but to knock the hell out of your ego, your fear, or your hang-ups. Once that is clear, then you can express yourself clearly. So who do we have on the show today? Maeghen Cotterill. Fresh back from jolly old England. She was in England and Wales, and she's going to talk about that a little bit. But I'm gonna offer a bit of an introduction that's on her website, the Five Elements website. Her studio is in Calgary, for those who don't know, and it reads something like this. Five Elements was founded in 2004 by our guest. Her practice of martial arts began at age 8. And after mastering multiple disciplines, she has been honored with the title Renshi, polished expert instructor who is devoted to the powerful transformational effects of martial arts. In her 30-plus years practicing martial arts, Maeghen has earned multiple black belts, including a 5th degree in karate, and is an 11-time gold medal world champion. Wow. She has been the WKU Western Canadian Regional Director for the past 4 years. We're going to talk about some of that and a little bit of controversy surrounding that. Not her, but the WKU, and the President of WKU Canada for Ringsport and Matsports since 2018, she's also been both a member and coach on Team Canada since 2005, which is what she was doing over in Britain, and fulfilling not only her goals of becoming a world champion, but helping others do so as well. Maeghen is committed to her own journey in the mastery of martial arts while sharing her passion with students of all ages and abilities. And she is the mother of a young autistic son and believes in inclusivity for everyone. She has created a safe and supportive environment where all students can explore their own power, achieve self-discipline, confidence, focus, and fitness through the practice of martial arts. And there's a quotation from her. I should add this to the quotations we've heard. She says, "I knew I had to create a safe environment where these kids could go and know they were good at something and the same as everyone else." How nice. Beautiful. So welcome to the show, Maeghen.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. It's flattering to hear all that commentary and introduction and everything, right? Yeah,
Well,
normally do that.
it's obviously well deserved. But before we dive in and talk about five elements, I'd like to know a little bit more of your origin story, as they say in the Marvel world. So
Uh,
we know you started with martial arts at the age of 8, but we don't know why. What drew you to martial arts at the age of 8? And just tell us a little bit more, maybe about your family background, where you grew up, what life was like as a girl, why you wanted to beat up boys. Perhaps that's obvious, but where did we begin on your journey? At age 8, how did you get into martial arts as opposed to I don't know, Barbies or painting or the violin or the things that a lot of little girls do?
yeah, I just wanted to take her limbs off. It was awful, or cut her hair or whatever. So I wasn't a huge Barbie. Shira, on the other hand, was pretty awesome. So I was totally into Shira and Catwoman. That was cool. Didn't mind her. She broke stuff. She would do like crazy battles with He-Man. So I was okay with that at that young age. But I started at 8. I was being bullied actually really bad. I grew up in South Calgary, and originally from Scarborough. And I guess just being punched in the face at the bus stop by an older girl every morning. And I totally sucked at girl sports. I remember having total meltdowns and temper tantrums in ballet class. I also grew really, really quickly. So I was, the biggest kid in class from the time I was probably in grade 1 until, gosh, maybe end of junior high, something like that. So I looked like a baby deer that was just born learning how to walk, and I had no ability to balance or have any coordination or agility. So it's like me doing rhythm gymnastics looked like Will Ferrell from Old School, which was pretty brilliant. So that was like my impression of what my little kid girl sports were like. Um, I was a really good swimmer though, but I was put into synchro swimming when I was younger, and I'm being twice as big as all the other girls and uncoordinated and everything, didn't really make my performance really strong, especially in the group. So I got made fun of quite often for that. And yeah, there was a karate place in a basement of a YMCA when I was 8 years old, with concrete floors and big pillars. And I could walk there on my own. I could get there. And so that was where I first started doing karate and martial arts. It was Okinawan. So if anyone's seen The Karate Kid, which is still my favorite movie of all time, that kind of inspired me to want to do karate. And yeah, like seriously, sweep the leg is still one of my favorite quotes, even though it's not a quote I give to anyone. I just, there's that. There's the old Mortal Kombat, there's the original Ninja Turtles, there's all those fun things. So, product of the 80s for sure and 90s. And yeah, started in karate, Okinawan Goju-Ryu karate at the age of 8. I was the only girl at the time. I was terrible at it, absolutely terrible at it. But I really liked that my instructor was calm and methodical and included me and really showed me that I was capable of doing it if I just tried harder or worked in different ways or figured out how my body mechanics worked. And I've always had serious ADD, ADHD since I was younger. I'll try to keep it under control on this podcast as much as possible, but martial arts
You're
helped me.
you're in, you're in, you're in good company.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I actually think it's a superhero skill, but yeah, I think it's just evolution. It's fine. It helps you multitask. It's good. It's good. So it helped me to sensory regulate. It helped me to control my emotions. It helped me to get over anxiety. It taught me how to present myself in front of others. It helped me to like I'm always moving. And so it actually allowed me to control my movements in a better way for myself, in a way that I wanted to project myself. And I actually felt like if I really practiced at this and I tried my best and I gave it a full effort and I concentrated and I continued to like develop every skill that I possibly could, that I could really be good at this. And it kind of spoke to my heart and it felt like home for me. So that's sort of where I started with my martial arts career.
Did you always have a very strong, obviously, to go into something, and I know a little bit about this, and to for someone to go into something and, let's say, not be a quote unquote natural. Most people would pick something up like martial arts and they would say, well, I'm terrible at this, and let's move on. What else you got? But did you always have this sort of approach that you had this drive where you would, if you're interested in something, you were totally engrossed in it? Because this is a feature of ADHD people. I know something about this, that if you're in, you're all the way in, and some of us actually are accused of overdoing things sometimes. I'm sure that's not true of you, but did you find that when you got into martial arts, it was just like, where you've been all my life, this is what I want to do, and you couldn't stop thinking about it, and just, is that sort of what got you? Because obviously, starting out, let's say, being worst in the class, if that was true, but then rising all the way to these extraordinary heights, that's a long journey. And I'm curious to know, and I think probably the people watching this are curious to know, well, how does that happen? Because that's not the story that we hear very much about people who become elite athletes, is it?
It's not, no. And I sucked. I was super terrible. I was told I sucked too. And so I would have the boys in the class just beat the snot out of me on a regular basis, or refuse to even partner with me and touch me because I was a girl. So they either beat me really bad or refuse to partner with me. And I have to admit, as the years have gone on, that hasn't changed much. So that's one of my driving forces to have created my studio, and to have tried to make things more inclusive and more equal. And that's what I continue to pursue now. But yeah, like I don't like being told that I can't do something, or that I will never be good at it, or I'm never capable of doing it, or I just, like, I should probably quit because I'm wasting my own time. If you tell me no, it's a huge motivator, especially with something that I love and am very obsessed about, hopefully in a positive way. But there was something special about it. I remember having a super terrible day at school and at home. Home life was very interesting, which I'll go into. And I remember hiding in my closet because it was the only place that I felt like no one could touch me or see me. And I remember saying, like, this is what I want to do when I grow up, at 8 years old. But I'd never seen a female martial arts instructor. I didn't know what that would look like. I was just a beginner. And there was this voice in my head telling me, like, this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. I thought maybe it would be, in law enforcement, or I would become a phys ed teacher, or I would pursue something to that nature where I could, like, teach little kids, do something self-defense based, work on body mechanics, be a leader, change the status quo of what I saw to something new and different. And then it honestly just felt like home. Like there was something in my heart that felt very comfortable and very familiar. And there was no reason for me to be a martial artist, like a little blonde girl at 8 years old in, Haysboro, growing up in Calgary. There was no reason for me to be good at martial arts and want to stick to it. And there was nothing anyone could do to prevent me from wanting to go, from being there, from doing my best, from getting the snot kicked out of me on a daily basis. I mean, I was punching 2x4s with my knuckles. I have arthritis in all my knuckles right now. I remember, crying, doing knuckle push-ups on the concrete floor because I messed up on something. I remember my joints were just growing and my legs had grown really fast. I was having those terrible leg growing pains, and I couldn't get down in my stance low enough. And my instructor would take like a shinai, which is a bamboo stick, and would hit you on the legs until you like bent your knees more. Didn't matter if you cried, didn't matter if you were bleeding, didn't matter if you peed your pants. That was the way it was. And I had a kind instructor at the time, like a very kind instructor at the time. My instructors were very interesting as I pursued my career. I didn't always have encouraging instructors and masters that I trained with. But this one, he did say, like, if you just work hard, like, you could get somewhere. And then I did my first tournament. I don't even remember whether I was 8 or 9. And I remember winning. It was just like a little tournament, but I kicked this little kid like clear across this hardwood floor. And there was no gear at that time at all, and no matting and no anything. So I felt terrible for this kid getting hurt. But then I was also told I wasn't going to do well in the tournament anyway. And I did. I won. So it was one of
Mhm.
those like really interesting experiences. And the more that I pushed, the better I got, the more I could test, the more I pursued. And then eventually just pushed into like wanting to be the leader of the class, wanting to teach the warm up, wanting to be the one that tutored the younger students and the lower belts. Like that was what motivated me, was like, no, I can do this. I'm going to be a leader. This is what I'm supposed to do. And it was always in the back of my head, no matter what had happened. Like, and for a long time, like I was paying for my own karate, in elementary school. I had a paper route in grade 5. I think I was 10 years old, and I had a little alarm clock that buzzed in the corner of my head, and I delivered the Calgary Sun. And that went to paying for my karate fees. And, I was raking leaves of my neighbors and mowing the lawn and babysitting, and that went to my karate fees. And I think it also helped me regulate my emotions. I think being someone with ADHD, I still need to work on how I respond to things, how I react to things, because I tend to be extremely passionate. And I want to make sure that the way I am being extremely passionate has some articulation and some good thought behind it. And I can communicate the way that I would like. And I think martial arts really helped me with that.
Mhm. Mhm. So you're doing all this stuff as a young girl. It doesn't sound like you had a lot of family support structure though when you were growing up, or were your parents really supportive of your martial arts?
Well, I'm the oldest of 4. There's 4 years between each one of us. So me and my youngest sister are 12 years apart. My mom had a lot of mental health issues when I was growing up, and still continues to now. So we're actually estranged. She's been estranged for a very, very, very long time. And I think I was an easier child when I went to martial arts, because at home, being the oldest of 4, I had a lot of responsibilities for my younger siblings. My dad worked away from town most of the time, and when he was back in town, he did have some addiction issues and things of that nature too. So our household was not positive growing up. I'm sure everybody has gone through struggles and things like that with their families, but I felt very unseen, very unheard. I protected my siblings a lot. I was responsible for their well-being on a regular basis. I was the one making the lunches. I was the one making dinner. I was cleaning the houses. I was taking them to their sports. I was paying for their sports. I was making sure that they ate and did their homework. I was one that tried to write notes in their lunch kits in the morning, because that's all I ever wanted when I was growing up, is someone to be like, have an awesome day. Um, I don't know if this is a self thing, because as I get older, I try to grow as an individual and process things differently. I don't know if I just never felt good enough because of my environment or because of myself, but I remember never, ever, ever believing that I was ever good enough to anyone or anything unless I provided acts of service or took care of people or made their lives more comfortable. And so I could go to karate if all my siblings were managed and taken care of, and the house was too. My mom wasn't angry, and my dad was out of town, so we didn't have to worry or process any of his moods or demands or anything like that. I think my dad might have done okay financially, but my mom made us all feel like we didn't ever have enough money. So there wouldn't, always be groceries in the fridge, or groceries that hadn't gotten bad already. There was a lot of issues surrounding that and our well-being and our clothing and things like that. But I thought I was a normal kid. I thought some of the abuses I went through when I was younger were totally normal. And I thought that I was the person that had to take care of all those things. And if I just was good enough at all that I could still do martial arts, and, everything in my
Mm.
world would be okay.
Mm.
And that's sort of what my childhood was like. And karate was it honestly, I think, saved my life from the time I was 8 up until even, on a regular
Mm.
basis. I think it really helped with dealing with what my home life was like, and the bullying that I went through at school that was just absolutely tremendous. And
Mhm.
it gave me a really like a safe haven almost.
So the karate became something of a sanctuary for you. This reminds me of a discussion we had with another guest on our show, a very successful athlete and former Olympian Theo Fleury, who, like you, had a very difficult upbringing. And he said that it was when he was on the ice that he felt that he could be himself, and he could be a kid, and all the other worries, everything else that was going on in his life sort of went away. And it sounds as though you sort of found something similar in karate. And of course, you took this to very, very high levels, 11-time gold medalist. I want to talk a little bit about what that was like. I mean, you've talked about how you became a martial artist and what drew you to it, but what made you a world champion at it? What was it? What was your motivation, and what was it like, competing at these very, very prestigious high level events?
Well, first, I love Theo. We've done a lot of work together in mental health and discussing sexual abuse in our sport. We both have had experience in that, which is really unfortunate. I have a lot of compassion and love for Theo. I think that he's been incredibly resilient, courageous, and he's made his community so much better, and he's provided so much more support for his community. And I think in circumstances too, where you love your sport so much and it is your safe place, and then it becomes not your safe place, which him and I both have in common as we progressed in our sport, especially when we became more elite athletes. That is something that I wish didn't happen. But I was given an opportunity to have my first satellite school when I was 16 years old. So I had my own program, my own satellite school at 16. I was still able to take care of my siblings. I was still able to, babysit and earn money for myself in order to be able to get rides and make it to training. When I was 16, I actually had my first female coach, and she changed my life. I actually recently got to send her a letter, write her a letter, and her husband a letter, thanking them for how they changed my life. They realized what kind of home environment I had. So they were the ones washing my uniforms, packing me a sandwich, making sure I was driven home if I was super far away from training. They were the ones that pushed and encouraged me to teach at this, at my own sort of like satellite school facility. And if not for them, I don't know where I would be. They were incredibly kind people, and they really saw that I had something special, which that didn't happen to me very often. So I was very lucky to be able to have that opportunity at 16. And so I was teaching 4 days a week. I went to high school at Bishop Carroll. So that allowed me to work at my own pace, and kind of do learning from home, or I could do classes in the morning. Like I started the very first preschool martial arts program in Calgary for 3-year-olds. I started that
Wow.
in 97, I believe, beginning of 1997. It was hilarious, actually. And it's been the greatest program because I think that little kids are sponges. They're super brilliant. They just need to be shown in different ways how to learn, and that they can accomplish anything once they're shown a different way. Like, we should be helping them to figure it out, not trying to push them into some sort of mold that we learned when we were younger and there was only one way to do things. So then from there at 16, I graduated high school at 18, moved out as fast as I could, which was hard for me because I had to leave my siblings. And I knew that if I left, they would become unsafe, which is actually what happened to the three of them. There was some really terrible things that happened to my younger siblings, and I wish them all the best, and I love them very much, but it was difficult for them, and they didn't quite have the same opportunities. Like, I was the first one to go into university. I mean, I have two younger siblings that didn't pursue, those kind of options because of the abuse that they went through at home. And so at 18, I had my own studio. I was working 3 jobs. I was going to Mount Royal University. I thought that I wanted to do kinesiology because I wanted to teach martial arts, but I'd never seen a female even open up a studio. And back then it was like every studio was in, a community center or a basement or a rec hall or a gym somewhere, but not like a beautiful standalone studio that was created just as such. So I kept teaching. I kept working 3 jobs. I was taking care of my siblings. They all took their turns living with me for periods of time. And martial arts was always where I felt safe and at home. And so by that time, I got my first black belt at 16 and Shotokan karate, because at brown belt, my first instructor moved away to become a doctor in the States. He was going to do his residency. So I had to find a different studio. So I did that. I got my red sash in Kung Fu by the time I graduated high school as well. I was a second degree in Shotokan by that time. So by, 18, I had a red sash in Kung Fu, a brown belt in Goju-Ryu, and a second degree black in Shotokan karate. So I loved it. I wanted to do more, but I thought I needed a university degree in order to be like that business person or figure out what it was that I was going to create by teaching and doing martial arts and that physicality. Couldn't do it. So I was taking part-time classes because I couldn't afford my university. So basically I was bartending, I was working in a clothing store, I was teaching martial arts 4 to 5 days a week and trying to do university. And so I was sleeping through my calculus classes, I was sleeping through my micro and macroeconomic classes. I was earning money to try to pay for university, but then going to university, I was so exhausted from working that I fell asleep. I couldn't apply for any loans. I remember deciding whether I was going to pay my rent or buy some groceries and just pay my rent at the time. But I figured it out and I kept working as hard as I could. Then eventually I brought my standalone martial arts school into a Taekwondo school. And so I had my own school, but I also helped to run this Taekwondo school. So as I was pursuing that and growing the karate background, I got my first degree black belt in Olympic Taekwondo and WTF Taekwondo. Because I feel like the more I was able to learn, the more validation I could give myself. I like achievements. Achievements make me feel like I'm good enough. And it helped me to like build and grow my confidence. And being a female martial artist, like there wasn't any growing up really. And there was a lot of misogynistic instructors. There was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of sexual abuse in the martial arts community since I was young. And I felt it really difficult to be a girl at the time and a woman doing martial arts and trying to navigate that. It always felt like no matter what I achieved, there was an excuse made or belittling that was made, or you're never good enough. That's not a real black belt. You're not a real teacher. You're never going to open up your own school. You're never going to have that beautiful studio that you want. You're not a great coach. This was like a daily basis of things that I went through. Plus getting beat up by men in the studio and or them just refusing to partner with me, being like, well, you're not good enough. So I'm not going to get the training I need if you're my partner. So I upgraded and got another black belt and taught. Then the instructor at the time and I didn't align. He wasn't as compassionate to special needs kids. And I've been teaching special needs athletes for an incredibly long time at that point. So probably since, I don't know, to 1995, I started teaching special needs athletes, especially autism spectrum, which I absolutely loved. And I felt like, where are all these athletes going to go? If this isn't a welcoming environment and they're told that they're not good enough to be here, like, where are they going to go? I'm one of those people. I'm one of those misfits. I'm one of those people that don't belong, that shouldn't be here, that should never have gotten a black belt, that should have never navigated this whole process. So I decided to quit when I was 23 and I opened up 5 Elements when I was 23 and I had no money and I was still in university and I was working 3 jobs and my little sister was living with me. And I was trying to pay for my other siblings, their school, their clothing, all that other stuff to try to help them and lift them up and get them to where they needed to be. And I remember I cried all night long and I'm like, how am I going to do this? I literally have 0 money, but where are they going to go? Like, if I don't do this, who's going to? And I thought, like, I need a place for me, like in a selfish way. I'm like, where am I going to go? Like, how am I going to do these things? Like, if I don't have martial arts, like, what is going to be my safe place to fall right now? Like, I don't have a safe place to fall. And I was bartending and I was young and I was working a lot and I was just building my confidence. And that industry is not a good place for someone unless they have stability in another area. And I know I probably could have fallen down a really terrible path of depression, anxiety, substance abuse, because I was already struggling with those things as it was. Some PTSD, some sexual assault, things of that nature. And I knew if I didn't have martial arts, like, I wouldn't survive. And so I asked a student parent who was very kind to lend me $5,000 at an incredibly high interest rate. And it was enough for a very tiny damage deposit plus all the savings that I had. And I had my mats and I had a little 1,600 square foot studio on Bannister Road in Mindapore. And I opened up 5 Elements in February, just after Valentine's Day. I remember that. February of 2003, when I was still 23 years old and had 35 students. And then now I've grown it to 1,200 students like 19 years later. And here we are, and more black belts, everything. So,
wow. Yeah. Just incredible. What a story. It's interesting to hear you talk about your journey, not only as an athlete, but also as an entrepreneur. And I have to remark that, so many people who are thinking about, want to be an entrepreneur, want to start their own business the way you did. They think that the main impediment is that they don't have money to start up. But the main problem that they have, and you'll understand this, is that they don't have all of the other things that you had in abundance. You obviously had a very strong work ethic. You're obviously very bright, very driven, right? Will not take no for an answer, and you also have a very high pain threshold. You're one of these people. Entrepreneurs are the kind of people who will jump off a cliff and build a parachute on the way down. And so that really, I mean, and I wish more people would understand this. This idea that being an entrepreneur really comes down to being willing to bet on yourself. And it sounds like that's what you had. And then because you had all these great qualities in abundance, that turned into money down the line because you drove yourself to have all this success. Okay, so that's a good backstory. Got the backstory. Now let's talk about 5 elements. I wonder if you wouldn't mind. This might seem a little tedious for you, and I'm sorry if it is, but let's assume, for example, that there are people who really don't understand the differences between these different types of martial arts, these different disciplines that you've mastered. Can you explain a little bit about like the difference between karate and kung fu and taekwondo, things like that? Just so people understand. Hey, well, this is what's different. This is Japanese. This is Korean. Could you just give kind of a brief synopsis of that stuff, or is that possible?
Oh, it's possible. I do it all the time. Oh yeah,
Okay.
It's common stuff. So what I really wanted from my studio was for it to be multidiscipline, because I want to learn as many disciplines as possible. So instead of outsourcing, I insourced. Is that right? I think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
So when I, had 2 disciplines that I started with in 5 elements, it was Shotokan karate and then it was Olympic Taekwondo. We've grown to 7 different disciplines now because I wanted to learn boxing, Muay Thai, wanted to upgrade my Taekwondo, I wanted to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I wanted to do, more arts, I wanted to learn from more people, I wanted to have more diversity, more cross-training. I don't like to be, I'm weak at a lot of things, and I feel like I only know like this much of things, but I wanted to be as well-rounded as possible. I don't like to have those weaknesses. I don't like to feel like I don't have a solution to things. So Shotokan karate is Japanese, where Goju-ryu is Okinawan. So Goju-ryu is kind of the founder of karate in general, and it's a hard and a soft style. So there's soft movements and sharp movements and a lot more flowiness. So a little bit more like Jeet Kune Do. Shotokan evolved into Japan, and it's a very hard style, like incredibly hard style of karate. Truthfully, my body type does not suit it at all. And I just got my 6th-degree black belt in it just recently, like before I could update my website. So I have a 6th degree in it now. Yeah, from like a master who I respect tremendously. So it was quite a moment to receive that, and I like to upgrade still, so it was pretty fantastic. But it's very square movements. It's very powerful. It's very sharp. It's very traditional. I like the foundation of it. It feels like meditation, but with such a like strong physicality. And then there is Taekwondo. I've done 2 types of Taekwondo. I've done ITF Taekwondo and WTF Taekwondo. ITF is North Korean. WTF is South Korean. WTF is the sport version that they sort of developed in South Korea, and it became an Olympic sport. So it's all about speed and timing and bouncing and faking and movements, and like it's the best cardio. It's great for reaction time. It's fantastic for flexibility. It's mostly kicking. So like if you're sparring, punches don't count. Stances are not a big thing. There's obviously some self-defense aspects to it as well. ITF is the more traditional form of Taekwondo that is more similar to karate. It's more combative. There's a lot more punches and kicks as well, a lot more self-defense, more application, more of that like rooted tradition. And then you have Muay Thai. So kickboxing is sort of a combination, I feel like modern kickboxing anyway, is between sort of karate and sport karate and Muay Thai. I just got my 6th degree in kickboxing as well, just in July as well. So I have 2 6 degrees, which is really cool. Really wanted that. Makes me feel good.
No
So
wonder you no wonder you have arthritis.
you know what? Like, if I didn't have so many things to do, I can't imagine what I would do with my time, but I'd probably make really bad choices. So it's a really good thing. It's a really good thing that I'm really involved in this stuff and this is what I want to do. I should not be left to my own devices whatsoever. So these are the things that keep me structured and within my foundation and being a grown adult. So
Mhm.
kickboxing is really cool because you have all the kicks and punches and all the full contact. So it's boxing with your legs. It's front kicks, it's roundhouses, it's side kicks, it's axe kicks, it's hook kicks, it's all that fun stuff. But it's less traditional. There's no forms. There isn't the application part. It's mostly just boxing with legs is kickboxing. And then you have
Mhm.
Muay Thai. So I have a black Preciate. Preciate's like the black belt that you get in Muay Thai. It's from Thailand. It's their version of their combative martial art. So it's 8 limbs. So that would be all your boxing that you would have, plus your sharp elbows. There's a variety of different elbows that you can use. There's all the kicking that's involved, the low kicks to the legs, as well as all the knees, the clenching, that kind of thing. I found it really, really good for self-defense because you learn how to take the hardest of hits from elbows and knees and being stuck in clenches with your head being manipulated to being thrown to the ground to being kicked harder than you could ever imagine. That was Muay Thai. And so I competed in K1 internationally. I've medaled multiple times internationally in K1, which is kind of an offset of like Dutch Muay Thai, sort of. So it's similar, but different. So yeah, Muay Thai is fantastic. And then I started with Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, which is kind of ground fighting, I guess, in the simplest of terms. It's joint manipulation, it's sweeps, it's submissions, it's takedowns. Japanese is from starting from a standing position and working your way down. And then Brazilian, which we offer at our studio right now, in my studio right now, is just the Brazilian version of Jiu-Jitsu. And it is the submissions. It's the learning how to ground fight. It's a joint manipulation. It's a beautiful sport. It's very calming. Um, I find it quite hard right now because a lot of the ways that I wasn't able to fight out of negative situations was being put in those situations, being pinned on the ground by someone much bigger than me. Most of the time it's a man, 99% of the time it was a man. But it teaches you how to work with your body and your momentum and your calmness and like how to use someone else's body against them in order for you to take a dominant position and a safe position and know how to defend yourself in those ways. So I found it incredibly healing and incredibly like useful in self-defense. And then boxing, fantastic. Obviously, you learn to block, with your hands and not your face. I've broken my nose many times blocking with my face and not keeping my hands up. So boxing is pretty important, but it's jab crosses, uppercuts, hooks. It's great footwork. It's great cardio. It's a great workout, good core strength. Plus we do some street self-defense as well, which is a combination of all the martial arts that I've done and my instructors that have multiple black belts have done. In addition to working with law enforcement, other groups that work with law enforcement and security and safety in order to put together something that I find to be quite practical, especially for women, people that are much smaller, youth. We also have an anti-bullying program that helps with that as well, and some of the psychology of being attacked and bullying and things like that. I think I've kind of, and then Kung Fu. Kung Fu is
Mm.
beautiful. I love Kung Fu. It's so amazing. It looks really not harmful, but it's very, very harmful and violent. Crazy. So it's beautiful. Having a red sash in that taught me a lot of patience, a lot of movement. It taught me to relax and then tense in certain situations. It taught me how to fight with open hands in a much closer situation. I did more Northern Kung Fu than Southern. Southern is more wushu, so it's like beautiful. It's like demo style. It's what you see in the movies. It's what you see in demonstrations. And the Northern was more like Jeet Kune Do, which was more application.
Mm.
It was harder. It was that close in fighting. It was learning how to use like soft parts of the human body to defend yourself. So yeah, I
Mm.
mean, I think every martial art is so amazing and so beautiful, and they all sort of fit together in their own way. And there's so much more to learn. I mean, I've touched such a small percent of all these things. So yeah, like I have 4 black belts in them with 2 6 degrees and a red sash, and I still can't seem to, like I still will take jiu-jitsu, but not as dedicated as I have my stand-up arts. But I just think for my own personal self, jiu-jitsu is the one that's the hardest mentally for me because I have to face my other demons as well as learn a martial arts. So
Mm-hmm.
that one I will continue to pursue, but I'm not putting any pressure on achievement on that one.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about five elements. Okay, so there's much that's in the name, but you've developed, and I'm reading from your website information. It says you've got a world class facility, expert instructors, obviously including yourself, committed to providing Calgary's best martial arts training. So let's talk about five elements. So, and actually, this is a question that's on the website. Well, why five elements? You want to explain about that a little bit? How you came up with the name and why that's so central to your philosophy and your teaching.
Well, five elements in Asian culture is very much about healing and balance. And so I find that there's so many elements that make something amazing or great. It can't just be one thing. It has to be a combination of things. I even have a little tattoo. Oh, you probably can't see.
Oh,
Anyway,
we
so
can
yeah,
see them.
I have the five elements on my arm, and I
Oh.
definitely believe in a well-rounded approach to martial arts. And I think that there's different ways of learning, and five elements was a way of putting all the pieces together and forming a well-rounded sort of concept that I really, really wanted. And now what's interesting is with all the different disciplines I have, you can find your element. Maybe you don't want something that's really combative. Maybe you want something that's a little bit more slow and methodical, and you can use that as a form of meditation. Maybe all you want to do is ground fight. Maybe all you want to do is make a friend. Maybe all you want to do is find some fitness. So what I try to create with five elements is I don't want to teach you just what I know and what I think you should be doing. I want you to come in and I a la carte, what the best outcome is for you, or, how we're going to achieve your goals. What's your goal? What do you want to do? Do you want to cross train? Are you trying to make new friends? Are you trying to have a healthier lifestyle? Do you want to learn some self defense? Have you always wanted to be a black belt since you were little? Are you just interested in learning about different culture and a different sport? Let's find out what works for you. You're the one that matters. It's your goals, it's your journey, it's your inspiration. Let's let's cater to you, to exactly what you want,
Mm,
because really for me that's all I ever wanted selfishly. Where would I go? I wanted to
mhm,
go to a place where I could choose. I wanted to go to a place where I fit. I wanted to go to a place where I saw something that I wanted to strive to be or to have or to overcome. I mean, I wanted 50-50 male and female instructors. So that's what I have. It
mhm,
helped actually make my student base equal male and female. I wanted to have people that were the best in their field. So, I mean, I have instructors from all over the world that have found my studio and are teaching there. I have people from Hong Kong. I have my Taekwondo instructors speak full Korean, full Chinese as well, which is really, crazy. I have a fourth degree black belt head of Ringsport as my Muay Thai coach. I wanted to improve my credentials so I could bring the best teaching to my students and continue to learn from other people, like learning from coaches in Ireland and Germany and Italy and, just Thailand, so that we could just offer the best thing that we possibly can for our students. And then I wanted to find a space that would cater to that. So we have 5,500 square feet, 30-foot ceilings, 3 classrooms, Olympic mats, full equipment, so that the same mats that we teach on, that you can train on, are the exact same mats you'll compete in at world championships, so that you
mm,
don't have to worry about adjusting your body or your balance or any of that to a different surface. Like, I wanted to make sure that I prepared my students, at a lower level or all the way to the top if they wanted.
mhm.
And so, I wanted to create that sort of environment where sky's the limit.
So obviously, teaching is a big part of what you do. This mentorship, and you obviously train instructors too, right? I mean, that's part of it too. That you give back to it by training your instructors. But let's talk a little bit about this international competition that you just got back from. So you're just over in England, Wales for a couple of weeks. You took a group of athletes. Were they all from your studio or from different parts of Canada? And I understand you were one of the coaches. You went over there, and there was a world class competition. You want to talk a little bit about this? Your involvement with Team Canada over in Wales.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the president of Team Canada, and I take a lot of pride in that. I'm the first female youngest ever in our history.
Congratulations.
So thanks. My goal for wanting to pursue that was to create change, to be honest with you, and to provide more opportunities in general, with how I had to compete, and what my opportunities were and lack of opportunities throughout my career. So we had 36 athletes from all over Canada in 102 divisions. And so there was, at least over 25 countries and over, I think it was 2,000 athletes that were there in Cardiff, Wales for the WKU. So that's the World Kickboxing and Karate Union World Championships. So it was in Cardiff. It was over 6 days. It was intense competition. It was 12 rings and 4 days and over 400 divisions. And it was pretty incredible. It had everything from forms to kickboxing to full contact K1 to weapons divisions to sport karate divisions to traditional karate kumite divisions. And it was the best in the world. It was pretty amazing. And so, like there was times when it was Team Quebec. And I mean, we had every province there except for Manitoba that was there. And I coached, I did a lot of center refereeing. So that was really important to be an international referee, especially making sure that the referees that we have are good. They understand the rule sets. They're really protecting the safety of the athlete. That's really important to me in our organization. So it's a pretty amazing event. We came home with a lot of medals. I don't totally have the count. I just got home last night. So I don't have the total count of what Team Canada did, but it was significantly double digits for sure. There was a lot of podiums. I was really proud of the athletes. I think the youngest athlete we had was in a minus 30 kilogram weight class, which is crazy. She was just tiny, tiny. There was athletes in their 70s that were competing in executive and veteran divisions that were pretty incredible to watch. Obviously, competing against Malaysia and Honduras and Lebanon and all over Europe and the States. Like, it's pretty incredible. And this is kind of setting the stage. I was given the flag this year because I'm hosting the World Championships in Calgary for the first time in its history, first time any of this nature has been in Western Canada, October of 2023. So it's pretty special and it's going to be a pretty big event. And I'm hoping to grow a lot more martial arts in the world, especially in Canada, and provide more inclusive and diverse opportunities for martial artists and for these athletes, and see what kind of a crazy, amazing event we can have.
That sounds great. Make sure to contact me about sponsorship.
That would be fantastic.
So you went over there, and obviously there were a number of athletes from your own studio that competed over there, which is great. How many were there from Five Elements?
Oh, I keep losing track. I'll have to count with my fingers, but I think there was 8 or 9. Yeah, I mean, I just remember how many divisions they were in. They were running around and doing like so many divisions. So 2, 3, I think there was about 8 from our studio, which is really, really good. They I think we had 80% of them medal and multiple medal, which is pretty incredible. We had a lot of both male and female athletes. It was pretty amazing to watch them fight, and they did everything from low kick kickboxing to sport karate to traditional to forms for the first time. A lot of them, it was their first opportunity to be at the World Championships. But we had several under 12 athletes. Like, there was quite a few. So, but I'm also used to, coaching Team BC and seeing athletes from Saskatchewan and helping with Team Quebec and Team Ontario. So just the fact that I've been taking the athletes for the last few years as Team Canada president, I mean, it was nice to kind of reconnect with the family, so to speak, and watch them kind of achieve their goals. There was lots of tears and lots of happy moments. And, you could hear the national anthem from the top of the podium quite a bit during medal presentations. So it was a really special time.
So I realize this is very fresh, but and maybe your first time as the head coach, but what are your key takeaways in terms of how your team is doing, and what are the things that you think you need to work on with the Canadian athletes going forward so that they can dominate on the world stage even more than they are now?
I think right now financial is a huge issue. I think there's a lot more athletes that want to compete. I mean, that was a limitation for me. I didn't win my first world gold medal until I was 30 years old because I couldn't afford it. So I had lots of opportunities to qualify, but could never really afford to make it further. So I think financial is a big deal. I think WKU Canada I've made into a federal and provincial not-for-profit, and I would like to, see a lot more financial backing, sponsorships, scholarships, things of that nature for the athletes moving forward. I'm trying to make the event in Calgary an opportunity for more people, even financially, to make it there. I do think that we're seeing a new type of athlete and a new type of martial artist. There's been, I'll just call it an old school attitude. I don't know what to kind of call it in a better term, but it used to be a lot more negative and combative and more violent and more militant. And I was never motivated by those things. And um, it has a tendency to put a dark cloud over an athlete's head, and that sense of failure. And it doesn't really encourage anyone to get better or get experience or grow. And so I'm trying to change Team Canada into saying, like, hey, you're at this huge international competition. Like, this is not a small feat. You have to be so courageous to be walking into this insane 12 ring event for 4 days, and you have to fight people. Like, it's not natural to do that. And you're terrified, and you're in a situation that you've never been in before. You don't know whether it's going to be okay. To be honest, I threw up multiple times before every fight that I've ever had in my whole life, including the non-combative divisions. Like, I would throw up. I'd be so nervous and so overwhelmed. Plus, you have to be able to handle the traveling and the time change and the intensity of the event itself. Like, there is thousands of people cheering and emotions from different countries and different languages, and like, it's a lot going on. It's difficult to handle. And I think what Canada needs is more opportunities for competition, because we have less population. We're very spread out. So we need more opportunities. We need more financial aid. We need to create that mindset of get that experience, do your very best. What do you need? Let's stay motivated. Let's stay positive. Hey, I'm proud of you. I know you're courageous and brave. I want you to get this experience. Okay, how do we grow from this? How do we change your training? How do we provide more training for these athletes? Because it's hard and it's expensive. Like, every year that I was training, I would have to go do fight camps in different places in Ontario because I didn't have the resources, the training, the coaching available in Calgary. So I was working 3 jobs, and I was a single mom for a long time to pay to actually go to these fight camps so that I could reach my level of winning a gold medal at the World Championships. And I lost a lot. And so I think more training for coaches, just more ability to have more resources in general. Like, I'm planning a trip across Canada over the next few months to try to meet with studio owners, coaches, promoters, and see if there's anything we can do as far as more resources, more training, more financial backing, creating a different mindset, creating a more positive community, and then seeing if we can have that ability to dominate at this year's World Championships. I'm really proud of my country, and I'm proud of the athletes that it creates, and I think it'll really help to bring Canada together. I feel like everywhere in the world has a lot of division right now, and martial arts seems to be one, like, language across the board. And I think it's done so many positive things for so many people. Like, it improves your confidence. It creates a community. It helps you self-regulate. It helps with a positive mindset. Like, there's so many benefits to martial arts. It's such an international language. Why can't we bring the country together? Why can't we bring the world together and create this, like, amazing event full of positivity and a sense of accomplishment and a sense of understanding, and everyone comes out of this feeling better than when they started. I want them to leave this going, I feel good, I deserve to be here, I accomplished so many things, like, I was brave, I fought for this in so many ways, because it's financial, it's mental, it's like psychological, it's physical. There's so many factors to it.
Mm-hmm. Now, you touched a little bit on some of the administrative politics that are going on in the sport. And I know there was recently a situation that happened with an event in Vancouver that happened in October, where the event was actually threatened by, let's just call it what it is, by just politics. And I understand this is kind of a developing problem within the sport. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, there has always been a lot of politics in the sport for a very long time. And through that has come a lot of different organizations that are trying to break out and break through and be the dominant organization. I've never really felt good about that. I think that there needs to be more collaboration and more understanding and more more working together than I think that we already have. I think there's a certain level of competition that isn't positive between organizations and studio owners, but politics has always been a major thing. So there's this one organization that is trying to prevent combat sports from happening by getting into the athletic commissions and the provincial organizations that sanction these events. And so for a long time, tournaments were able to run without these issues as long as you had good referees, a good body of rules, you're protecting the athlete's safety, you're having all the right safety protocols, matting equipment, all of those things. And within that, the competitor had the option of going to compete or not. But we didn't have like our provincial and federal governments preventing us from actually doing these sports. I mean, I just heard right now they're trying to prevent the Olympic karate team from practicing or holding competition events because they say that they're a prize fight, which is exactly the same thing that, I just experienced training the BC Referees Association. It was the same thing. We were accused of having a tournament that was going to be well run. It's been running for over 30 years. And for the first time, we were accused of having prize fights and not maintaining the safety of any competitors that were going to be at this event. And so what WKU Canada is trying to do is to say, we want the ability to have these events safely. We want the freedom to have these events safely, which they have been conducted as such for a long time. We don't want the politics. We don't want to be blackmailed. We don't want to be coerced into paying thousands of dollars for a sanctioning that really doesn't matter. The organization that we've been dealing with basically doesn't have very many studios across Canada that are affiliated with the studio. The referee course is only a few hours. You don't have to be a martial artist, which I find very difficult. If you're not someone that is aware of a martial arts to what I would say an instructor level, which is a black belt, you shouldn't be allowed to referee or judge that art. You don't know when things have bad intent or when another competitor is going to hurt a competitor. There's just so many nuances that it's like not hiring an accountant and someone going for 2 hours and taking a course and saying, I can do your accounting for you, no problem. And Revenue Canada, it should be fine. It's not the same. You need to have experts in the field of running a proper tournament and ensuring the competitor safety. So this organization says, well, we'll sanction the event through the government if you give us thousands of dollars and you commit to this. Oh, and once you sign over and say, okay, well, I do that, you have to fill out that waiver, and all the competitors have to fill out that waiver, which says you're now part of the organization, which they're claiming legally you can't compete in any other organization's tournaments once you do that. And so there's a lot of poor politics that are happening, trying to crush our sport instead of developing it. And it's becoming about money and control. And I feel like ego instead of just allowing us to continue and to be the best martial artist that can come out of Canada at this point.
That sounds like a real challenge, but it sounds like you're up to it. I want to come back to something, if you don't mind, because I think it will speak to a lot of people who have children and maybe are thinking about putting their children in sport, or maybe think that they have their child in the wrong sport. I'll tell you a little story about myself that you might be able to relate to, and then I want to come back and talk about you and your relationship with your son. My first experience in sports was when I was about 4 years old. And as you might imagine, I was a very weird kid. I spent a lot of time in my head. I was reading books and comic books and things like that before I went to school. And I was nonverbal. I actually didn't start talking until after I was about 3-4 years old, which people find shocking because now I talk all the time. I don't shut up. But so anyway, my first experience in sport was my father thought that what he would do is he would do an immersion experiment. So he put me on a soccer team. I had never expressed any interest in soccer, and put me on a team. And I can still remember being out on the field and the other kids just running around chasing this ball, and I was catatonic. I stood still, and the sensation was like this: if you stood on the white line in the middle of a freeway with cars whizzing past you, that was the sensation I had. And so that was my first experience with sport. Later on, I really got deep into sport, and I love sport. But coming back to you and your relationship with your son, you talked about, you said he's autistic. So explain to us um, how what your relationship with your son is with martial arts, how this is good for him, and how this is even great for a little boy with autism, because I think this would speak to a lot of people who have weird little, who they think are weird little kids, but are actually quite wonderful.
Oh, fellow weirdos. Part of my community. I think of myself as a fellow
Secrets out,
weirdo.
secrets out. Yeah.
Yeah. All the weirdos are finding each other right now. It's perfect. My son was nonverbal for a very long time, actually, and it took equine therapy before he was
Mm.
speaking, and that was after he was 3. And then even that, he was delayed until he was about 5. But he is brilliant. Like, he's a brilliant, brilliant kid. He just turned 13. Plays very high level hockey and golf as well, high level soccer, and was a martial artist. So um, with watching children with autism since I was like a young instructor, a very young instructor, it was just like they can do everything that everyone else can. Like, who's not weird? Everyone's weird. And we all learn very differently. And it's funny with my son and verbal, he was like, I don't need to talk to get what I want and to get my point across. Like, you're the weirdos that need to have eye contact and handshakes and hugs. Like, I'm good. I'm totally good. I'm doing this to make you feel comfortable. And that's how I feel. And he's incredibly brilliant. So, I think we're all in the right community here. So for children with autism, I found that martial arts is really good as a nice little foundation place to start. Um, they have a problem sometimes with communication, fine gross motor skills, agility, coordination, core strength, the ability to figure out social dynamics. Like, that's huge. So martial arts is an individual sport, but that you get to learn with a group if you want. So I've taught several spectrum and neurodiverse students one-on-one. So getting down to their level, learning what motivates them. I mean, I have one student who is the sweetest little kid in the world. I've had him since he was 5. He's 13 now. Only private lessons. He would only let me teach him if I played Fall Out Boy for half an hour. Literally, the Fall Out Boy sound, like, I know all of their songs inside and out, because if he could sing and he could feel comfortable and he could get his anxiety down, he would listen to what I had to say. Or if I wanted him to like punch or kick targets, I would ask him about like, what's his favorite game right now? Or who's his favorite superhero? What was his favorite movie that he ever did? So sometimes it's just children that are neurodiverse and autistic, you just need to be able to relate to them in a way that they feel understood and seen and heard. Sometimes that's lowering your voice. Sometimes that's act like being a more soft instructor. And then showing them that, okay, well, this is how you work on your movement and your regulation. And this is how you learn to make a friend. This is how you make eye contact. This is how you make someone feel respected, because they feel like they show respect, but the way that society deems things to be respectful or social behaviors are different from what they understand. And honestly, maybe sometimes they are stupid.
Mhm.
I mean, in reality, but they're things that we have had to do in order to be accepted by society. So even with my son, I put him into martial arts when he was 2.5. He was nonverbal. And it taught him how to interact. It taught him intent, actually. Martial arts is a great one for teaching intent. So it's like you can be in a combative situation and then understand it's not combative, or be able to be vulnerable with someone else and not feel threatened, or to understand that touching someone else can mean something different than what you think it can. So it's like, for example, we'll run in the beginning of class, and I have several neurodiverse students that will be in a regular classroom, because I think it's important that all athletes are together, because even the athletes that seem to be more typical diverse still have their challenges as well. So it's nice for them to be able to relate to other people and back and forth and learn and grow from that. But you'll notice that, like, some of my neurodiverse students, if someone's running faster and accidentally hits them, they're learning the lesson that it was an accident. There was an intent. This is how you talk to that friend. This is how you have good communication. This is how you partner with them later, where you can play a game, which game is like, this is how you block your head, or this is how you hold a shield or a target. But it really helps them with all of the nuanced things that they struggle with. And in the type of studio that I built, you'll find that different children, especially on the autism spectrum, some don't want to do karate, they want to do Muay Thai. Some don't want to do Muay Thai, they want to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So it's figuring out what their niche is, how they learn the best, with what instructor they connect with, and how they're able to develop through that. And I found it to be very interesting. Like, I thought my little boy would love karate because he started in karate when he was 2.5. He ended up liking Muay Thai, but then liking the drills, the training, the bag work, but not the sparring. Because he's like, people break rules, Mom. And when they break rules, there's warnings and there's things like that. He's like, I don't want to risk the chance of them breaking a rule and them not understanding. I'd rather hit the bag, do the partner work, do things like that instead of that next thing. And then I have children that are like, I'd rather ground fight because I can think, I can process. I'm, figuring out my body mechanics better. But it helps with their flexibility, agility, gross motor skills, communication, vulnerability, anxiety, depression, a place where they feel like they belong, where they feel like they're normal, where they feel like they're seen and heard. They can come in, they can talk about their day, they can relate to someone that might not relate to them in their normal life. And I mean, our instructors are also quite diverse as well. So they either have backgrounds with students with special needs, or, they have some spectrum things, or they've had, a lot of things happen in their life that have helped them to be more compassionate, understanding type of instructors. They've gone through anxiety or depression. They've gone through military. They've just developed as human beings where they can relate to these children or these athletes in a much different fashion, which I really appreciate.
So that covers very, very comprehensively the situation of children. But there's another large demographic of people who find things like gyms and fitness studios very daunting. So these are people who, let's say adults who are suffering from certain, physical impairments, disabilities. Maybe it's obesity, or somebody has had an injury, or they've had a heart attack or a stroke, something like that. Are there still programs for people like that? They can come to Five Elements and get involved at certain levels in order to get moving and get fit and develop flexibility and sort of become more physically capable than they are before they come in the door?
Yeah, we have people that come in every day, like so many adults that I see every day that are coming in and deciding to want to try martial arts. We have several programs where, for example, we do, situational awareness self-defense every Monday night, which is in a private classroom. So it's all private upstairs. And, we just focus on that bit of martial arts. So if someone is coming in and their concern is, I want to defend myself, or I've been through some trauma, or this is the reason why I want to explore martial arts, we allow them to take those classes and do a drop-in even if they want. We have recreational classes. We have fitness classes that they can take. We basically build the program to help with their goals. So, if you have an injury, or you're, needing to get, your fitness improved or things like that, you can choose that class or program that works for you. And we help to navigate that for you so that you feel like you are so included. You feel very much normal in that class. You don't feel overwhelmed. You don't feel like you're the only one that's kind of, not included. Like, we want a really inclusive environment. But what we also try to do is we will offer private lessons or private courses or things like that. We have a private sensory classroom upstairs, which is really amazing. It's away from everything else. It's away from the busyness. We can control the lighting. We can control the softness of the equipment. We can control our voices and noise and things like that. No one's staring at them, but they can still see out into the other classroom. So you can learn in the environment and in the situation that works best for you without feeling overwhelmed. I mean, I've walked into several martial arts schools and gyms, and I'm like, ooh, I don't feel good here. I don't feel comfortable here. I feel really overwhelmed. I feel like it's quite combative. I don't like the energy or the vibe. And I've tried to build my studio to be quite the opposite of that.
So if people are taking this in and they're intrigued, and they should be, and they want to find out more about what you do, and maybe sign up themselves, or register their kids in programs, what's the best way for them to do that? Should they come down and check out the studio, or visit the website, or call in? What's sort of the best? What do you recommend?
I mean, our website is really good. It's fiveelementscalgary.com. What I've tried to do with building this website is there's little videos on there describing each one of the martial arts. and the videos show kind of what you'll be going through in those classes and kind of what the program involves and what to expect. It has, you know, a lot of information on who the instructors are, what their backgrounds are. It has all the frequently asked questions, things of that nature. But also, I think it's great to come in and do a tour of our facility and meet our instructors and have a little one-on-one where we can answer any questions, figure out where you're going to fit best, figure out what your goals are, how you want to achieve them, all your concerns. I mean, we want to know your concerns so we can help, you know, to minimize those as much as possible. We want you to see if it's the right energy for you. I think energy is a very important thing. I think finding martial arts is like finding a doctor. Like, you have to find that right fit for you in a place that makes you feel comfortable with an alignment that feels right for you. So I think the website's a great place to start. Send us an email or a message. We'll set up an appointment, or feel free to drop down to any class you are welcome to watch. We actually have a viewing area where you can watch all of our classes and see what our programs look like and who's instructing them and how they flow. And we have a full receptionist that can answer any of those questions as well if you come on down.
Great. So this has been just a splendid conversation. We've learned so much about you and your remarkable story. Also, we've learned a lot about martial arts and fitness and health and just a whole number of things. So we've really enjoyed talking with you and getting to know you, Maeghen. This is the part of the program that we call the reading list. I believe I did warn you about it, but you know, you don't have to reference books. You can reference anything you like. But I have chosen a couple of books. One is a work of nonfiction, the other a work of fiction. These may demonstrate my ignorance of martial arts. I hope not. The first book that I'm going to refer people to is called The Tao of Jeet Kune Do. And this is a book that was written by Bruce Lee, I believe back in the 1960s when he was living in San Francisco. So this book is compiled from Bruce Lee's notes and essays and originally published in 1975. This is a volume of seminal martial arts guides of its time, the science and philosophy behind the fighting system Lee pioneered himself, Jeet Kune Do, which I believe translates to the law of the intercepting fist, is explained in detail, depicted through hundreds of Lee's own illustrations, and with the collaboration of Lee's daughter Shannon and Bruce Lee's enterprises. This new edition that's listed here is expanded, updated, and remastered. The reason why I mention this book is the people who follow this show know that I'm something of a polymath, in that I'm interested in almost everything. And so I read this book when I was in university, even though I was not interested in martial arts. But I have to say, this is a book, and part of the reason why I mention it, I recommend it. I've thought about many, many times, and I've gone back to many times, because it's not really a book about martial arts. I'm sure it is that to people who understand martial arts, but it's actually a book about human beings and our minds and how to discipline ourselves and how to think. And I've actually used some of the techniques, and this is a reveal to some of the lawyers I've dealt with over the years. I've thought about this many times, especially in dealing with overly aggressive people. And sadly, we have quite an abundance of them in the legal profession. And, you know, how do you deal with that? How do you, why, and when someone is behaving really aggressively and over aggressively, why are they doing that? And how can you deal with that? How can you discipline your mind so that you're acting instead of reacting? And so it's an incredible book on many levels, but just the discipline of being able to steel yourself and to think. And, you know, if I've been able to do anything in my career as a lawyer, it's been to remain calm in situations when many people would panic. And I credit books like this for that. So it's a wonderful book. So those of you who are seeing this, oh, gee, I don't want to care about Kung Fu or karate. Listen, this is a great book. It's a great book about life. The second one is a book that I read a long time ago. It's a work of fiction that many people might know. It's called Shogun. It's a novel by James Clavell that was written about 50 years ago. It was made into a very popular TV miniseries in the 80s, for those of you who are old enough to remember it. But the reason why I recommend this book is because I learned a great deal about Japan, about ancient Japan. when the Europeans first came into contact with the Japanese a few centuries ago, they weren't a primitive society, but they were an ancient society. And so, and there's a lot of martial arts in this book, and a lot of the philosophy behind martial arts, because of course, the shogun were these groups of warriors, and their method of warfare was, of course, the martial arts. And it's an interesting book because it does explain in this fictionalized story the contrast between sort of the European mentality and the ancient Japanese philosophy, and how integral and how woven into the fabric of Japanese society martial arts were at that time. And I don't know if that's still true, but I hope that it is, because it's quite a beautiful explanation. But it did reveal to me how essential the martial arts are to and certainly Japanese culture. I don't know if that's true of the other cultures. Maeghen would know, but that's why I recommend this book. And for those of you who just love a great love story, that's in there too. There's also violence and lots of other great stuff. So it's an all-around great book. So that's why I recommend it. So Maeghen, we'll turn it over to you. Do you have any sources of information, books or websites or things like that you would recommend to people who want to learn more about martial arts and what you do?
So what's interesting is I do like the two books that you talked about. I do think that martial arts is like the integrity, the respect, the tradition, the pride, the philosophy of all of that is really interesting. I mean, Bruce Lee's book is great. It's martial arts is really mental, and it's about human beings, and it is about reaction, and it is about all the things that he describes and evolving and being like water. I mean, it's pretty awesome when you think about
Mm-hmm.
those things, right? And I love the ancient tradition of, shogun and Japanese culture and things like that. One of the books, I mean, being a female martial artist and coming from a certain way and then having to evolve and then like learning and growing through that evolvement. I mean, I didn't have a lot of mentors that I could take a look at. So Ronda Rousey's biography is really interesting. I cried through probably the first half of it because I resonated quite a bit with her struggle and what she went through. I had to make ridiculous weight classes that caused eating disorders, depression, anxiety, a lot of medical complications where she faced in the judo world and the martial arts world. She faced very, very similar things. She describes them in the book, how she had to train, what she had to sacrifice, how she was treated, her family life, her cutting weight, some of the things that she went through. So I really enjoyed her explanation of that. Chrissy Cyborg had a documentary that she did as well. And she's from Brazil. She's an MMA fighter from Brazil. And she has a very interesting perspective on what she went through as well. And I resonated with quite a bit of that. It was I remember watching it right before I competed in 2016. And I mean, I'm 5'10" and I was fighting at 120 pounds because I was told that was how I was going to be successful. And that was the appropriate weight class for me. I would never tell another student to do that. And she talks about her weight loss journey and her cutting weight for the UFC. And she's pretty close to death. Like she's one sick woman to try to make that. So there is a few that I think in the martial arts realm are pretty important. I don't know. There's several other books that I like, but they're mostly on like business and, things like that. Like, it's funny. I don't ever remember the titles. I just remember what they were about. So the owner of Starbucks, the founder of Starbucks,
Right.
Charles Schultz, is that his book about how he created his brand and how he grew through that and all the mistakes that he made. I mean, I love learning about people's failure, especially in business. So I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed Theo Fleury's books very, very much, even though they were devastatingly sad, and how he grew from mental health and things like that. I found them to be quite powerful. Yeah, there's Mel Robbins. I like her quite a bit and reading a lot of her books and how to figure out that and how she changes her life. Brene Brown, her new one, Atlas of the Heart, I just read. I liked that one for communication. I think that it's good whether you're a teacher, student, human being, in whatever relationships you're in. So those are sort of what I'm into at the moment. I mean, I like martial arts books, but I really like people's struggle of overcoming, and I really like learning about failure. I like learning about entrepreneurship. I like learning how to think differently, how to changed my mindset quite a bit. Like Tim Ferriss is great for that too. I mean, reading Tools for Titans was an amazing book on how all these experts in their fields, how they navigated business and what their mindsets were and how they optimized, you know, working the best at the best times and how they maximized their bodies and things like that. So I find those very motivating.
Might be time for you to think about sort of writing your own memoirs. I would say that would be a pretty fascinating, might have the makings of a bestseller there, Maeghen.
I don't know if anyone
if you can find the time. Yeah. Sitting down to write is tough for somebody who's got to be moving all the time. But yeah, you can get people to fill in your gaps, right? Yeah, I think that would be an amazing story.
Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, so I'm just saying I would buy it.
Yes, I got one sold. I like it on the pre-sale. Done.
Well, thanks again for being with us, being our special guest here on Grey Matter, and just continued success in everything that you're doing. And that's saying a lot because you're a very busy lady. Oh, by the way, are you offended if I call you a lady? I know some people have commented that they think that's old-fashioned.
No, I just think sometimes you need to act more like one. That's all.
Okay. Fair enough. And of course, those of us on the other side of the ledger, we need to be more gentlemanly, don't we?
Aw, it's okay. Sometimes it's nice to be a lady. I have to admit, there's a lot of times where in my industry, I have to be a little more aggressive and assertive. Sometimes it's nice to remember that I am a girl, I am a lady, and that it's okay to be that way sometimes. And I do enjoy the feminine persona and those things. And so, yeah, I just have to remember that I'm not, needing to be so tough all the time and kind of sit in my feminine and not my masculine all the time.
Well, Maggie Thatcher was pretty tough, and she was known as the Iron Lady. So there it is.
Yeah, maybe I'm the Iron Maeghen. We don't know.
Anyway, thanks.
A tornado of intensity, so maybe that's what I am, a tornado.
Yeah, I think tornado is a good way to just, maybe you should put that as your new logo for 5 Elements. But then again, a tornado does imply chaos, and that's whatever else you are, what you're doing. It's not chaotic. There's a great deal of design and order and teleology going on within 5 Elements. That's become very, very clear from talking to you. But anyway, in any case, we want to wish you much continued success with everything that you're doing. And thanks again so much for being our special guest here today on Grey Matter.
Well, I really appreciate you being here. I admire you and your work tremendously and the things that you've accomplished. I mean, it's really nice speaking to someone that is as accomplished and has had a very interesting, very amazing, very elevated journey as well. So it was quite an honor to be asked to speak today. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. I appreciate it. Thanks, Maeghen.
I wish you all the best as well.
Okay.